Welcome, and thank you for joining us this Sunday evening, the first of the year, January 2023. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. My name is Athena McKay, the Executive Director of Flint Innovative Solutions. And again, we welcome you to Taking It to the Streets, healthy conversations for us, by us, COVID-19 and beyond. Please do like and share this podcast with your network so they can be informed from our local health officials, health practitioners, and we do have a special guest as always for you. You are in store for a treat. This production is brought to you by the grant funding of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. In NICE project, this is the Genesee County COVID-19 Portal, or GCCP. We work with faith-based organizations as well as community centers to increase COVID-19 access and information and education. With our partners, Michigan United, which you know our phenomenal panel will be joining us shortly, have put 24 shots in arms for our residents here in Flint. We've also developed our mobile app, GCCP, which is a centralized place to find vaccine clinics, testing sites, and community resources. Introducing to some, and just giving another shout out for others who know these boots on the grounds, our phenomenal panel, Dr. Latressa Gordon, Nurse T, Nurse Battle, and again, we have a special guest, Dr. Kent Key, who's the Associate Professor of Public Health and Health Disparities Researcher at the at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine, Division of Public Health. He'll be sharing with us what social determinants of health are and how they affect our lives. So let's dive right in. We have that special question for our panelists. The question today is, what are some things you do to take autonomy of your life? I will ask Dr. Gordon to give the audience some insight. What is it that you do, ma'am?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. What pleasure to be here, and Happy New Year. Some of the things that I do to take autonomy of my health is following up with my screening guidelines according to my age, and also what my physician would recommend. So if you reach a certain milestone ages, there's certain testing that you should do. If you're 50, you should do a colonoscopy. You do your mammograms, pap smears, things of that nature. Make sure I'm monitoring my blood pressure, glucose, things of those natures, and just keeping up with all my testing. And if that's the best thing I can do to take autonomy of my health. And I will turn over to Nurse T in the place to be.
Hi, everybody. That is just an amazing question. One of the things that I do to take autonomy of my health is I'm learning my body. I'm learning what matters to my mind, what matters to my heart, and what matters to my physical aspect. So knowing me, learning me, and being responsible for the triggers, past experiences, just transitioning into a healthy mindset, making sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do externally as well as internally to stay healthy. External, we good at looking good, and I think I look pretty good. But the thing about it is internally. So the things that I'm desperately, and when I say desperately, I am desperately working through being intentional about the three aspects of my mind, body, and my soul. Oh, now I'm gonna turn it over to Nurse Battle.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. And so, yes, absolutely. Doc G and Nurse T hit on very important points. Just being mindful of our bodies, of my body, is one of the ways that I take autonomy. I follow up and stay current on screenings and appointments, follow-up appointments. And I also, within those follow-up appointments, just make sure that I do my own research. They say don't Google, don't try to diagnose ourselves, but you do want to have some knowledge of what you want to talk to your doctor about. So just having questions when you do go to the doctor, and just being your own advocate when you do go to the doctor. So and now I'm going to turn it over to Ms.
Thank you, Nurse Battle. Now I'm on a protocol. We don't normally do this, but Dr. Key, I want you to please answer that same question. From a health professional, from a man of God, what are some of the things? Unmute yourself, sir. Please tell us, what are some of the things you do?
Well, the first thing I do is I constantly force myself to look at health outside of the traditional view. That health is just more than physical. It's more than just the absence of illness and disease. And so when we think about health, we normally think about physical health. In the African American community, mental health is becoming a little bit more comfortable having conversations, still taboo. But we also have spiritual health, we have cultural health, we have social health. So I make it my priority at least once a month to really try to assess the multiple domains of my health, which make me who I am. So yes, of course, making sure that I'm staying in line with what my medical doctors are saying, but also looking at my emotional, spiritual, and social well-being are just as important. And then also understanding the impact that my mental health plays on my physical health. And so I'm just always trying to do monthly assessments and some people call that mindfulness. Some people just call that just sitting still and listening to yourself and listening to your body. But I literally etch that out on my calendar so that I can try my best to get into. My grandmother used to say when I got in trouble, go over there, sit in that corner and get to know yourself. So I go over there and sit in the corner and get to know myself. And I try to look at all the aspects of my health. And with that, I think gives me the consciousness of what I need to do for the upcoming month. There you have it.
Well, all right. I know there's a reason I needed to ask you. What a phenomenon. And as you guys, some of you are new to this space, but you are in store for a treat. These health professionals have been transparent. They're real. They're in the streets. They're also professional and can provide tons of information and education. So again, you're in a treat for today. I want to turn it back over to Nurse Bat. In just a second, I got ahead of myself, please. Alita, if you could pull up the slides. For many of you, SDOH may be new to you, which is the social determinants of health. When we heard of the news that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has made January, recognize it as its first social determinants of health, and they are actually offering a 3-day summit. We reached out quickly and brought Dr. Key, which is an expert in this field, to share more and educate the community on what exactly that is. And we'll add that link to the summit if you're interested. Next slide, please. To know more, as Dr. Key gives you an overview, what social determinants of health is. We try to make science pretty and fun and engaging, but I'll just throw this up here. I'm not even going to talk about it because he's going to talk about it. But social determinants of health is something that affects each and every one of us. Nurse Battle, I'm throwing it over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. And I hope everyone had a happy and healthy holiday season. And so we are back in business at the Genesee County Health Department. This last is updated. This is from December 19th. So the testing positivity rate for COVID was 13.6% at that time, and we had 285 cases. And again, Dr. Deb would call this lag time, I believe. So the updated numbers will be in probably next week. Next slide, please. So our clinics are starting up this week. on January 10th, on Tuesday, we will be at Our Lady of Guadalupe from 12 to 2 p.m. And on Thursday, Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church from 3 to 5 p.m. And also the Michigan State University College of Medicine will be having a vaccination clinic from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Michigan United will also be at Hasselbring on January 13th, on Friday, January 13th, from 3 to 5 p.m. doing, I believe, all ages. And then next week on Martin Luther King Day, I think we will be at Burston. I think we have a slide coming up where we'll talk a little bit more about that, because this is just, it's an awesome event. But it is a cancer health screening and health fair that will be at Burston on January 16th from 12 to 12:30, I believe, to 5 p.m. And then next week also Central Church of the Nazarene on Wednesday, January 18th, and on Thursday, January 19th, Greater Holy Temple from 10:30 to 12:30. Next slide, please. Again, the COVID vaccine is available. Well, we're doing ages 6 months and up. And just, be encouraged to, if there's a clinic that you are able to go to, just make sure of the ages, because all clinics don't do all ages. Some of them do 5+ and up, but some of them do 6 months and up as well. Next slide, please. We are still doing testing, and our testing sites remain Walgreens, Hamilton Community Health Network, and Rite Aid do walk-in clinics. Next slide, please. Walk-in testings. And also, Word of Life Church does testing on Tuesday and Thursday from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at Bethel United Methodist Church on Ballinger Highway. And also Monday, Friday, and Saturday at Macedonia Baptist Church from 10 to 3 p.m. Next slide, please. And if you know anyone who doesn't have access to the website or to the internet, they can call the COVID-19 call center at 810-344-4800 for help. And if you know of anyone who is homebound and can't make it to any of the clinics, or maybe they don't feel comfortable coming out to the clinics, we also provide home visits where we'll come to you and give your vaccination if you're interested in that. Next slide, please. So the Flint Community Cancer Screening and Health Fair is an awesome opportunity. Burston Fieldhouse will be hosting it, and it is, I got the name wrote down. It's the National Minority Quality Forum. That's a nonprofit initiative that lines up with President Biden's cancer screening initiative. So we will be there on Martin Luther King Day, January 16th, from 12:30 to 5 p.m. And some of the things that will be offered: free colorectal cancer evaluations, free health screenings, lunch will be provided, free vision tests, free Zumba class, and I believe there will be some entertainment as well. So please come out. That's an awesome way to commemorate Martin Luther King Day. And I believe I'm going to turn it over to Nurse T. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurse Battle. Nurse T, you are muted, ma'am. Did you want to share some of the things that we'll use for health checklist?
Yeah, so let me see, can I see it? So keep a list of your primary care doctors, special doctors, specialists, dentist phone numbers in your mobile phone. In addition, if you don't have a phone or if your battery goes dead like mine occasionally do, it'd be a good ideal to be able to just get you a little notebook that you can fit in your pocket, or that you can fit in. My granddad used to have it. He used to call it a pen pad, because he would have that shirt that have that pocket, and he would put all his pens in there. So making sure that you have a pad and you have some access of information, the type of medications and everything you're on, and who all you see. That's good, just in case your phone goes dead or you're not able to have service. The next thing is keep a copy of your insurance card for all of your coverage, medical, dental, prescriptions. Sometimes medical and prescriptions are on the same card. Or take a picture of the card and keep them in a folder in your cell phone camera roll. Again, once again, it's also a good idea to take a picture of all of that information and just have it on a piece of paper and like tri-fold it, and then you can put it in your little notebook, and then make sure that you keep that with you, and you can put that in like a Ziploc plastic bag, to keep it safe as well, if you don't always want to keep it in your front pocket, or if you want to keep it in your purse. And one thing that I've discovered, it might not be bad to have a couple copies of them, to make sure that different family members or different people that you trust, that they'll have it as well. And also, if you in an event you are admitted to the hospital, letting them know who your care provider champion is, meaning somebody that, as far as your visitor, or somebody that you feel okay to release information to, because sometimes patients come in and they don't sign up any visitors. So then when visitors come, they're not allowed to see them because they're not on the list. And then some organizations may even have you set up a password, and then that individual that you trust for your healthcare, I call them healthcare champions or partners. So then that way they'll have the password, and so they'll be able to call and get information, because we want to be careful as far as HIPAA. And also that would be the designated person, that you would trust and share information to, that you could give back to the rest of your family. Use your mobile medical ID app, or create a paper list that we have discussed, to add to your emergency contacts important health information. Allergies. And when you write down your allergies, a lot of times people will not be specific with allergies. They may say, give me it make me cough, or be specific. If you have medications and say it causes you to be short of breath, causes hives, because sometimes it can be an allergic reaction, and sometimes it's not a true allergy, but you may have had a reaction to it. So really making sure you document clear what the allergies are, and what you're allergic to. Your medications, making sure that sometimes we do cursive writing, but make sure that you print them, or in an event, if somebody can type it out for you as well. Your health conditions, knowing your history, and knowing some of your family's history, your vaccines. Keeping up with your card. I know that's hard, and a lot of times we put our vaccination card, in a safe place because we don't want to lose it. But just being familiar of where it is, and then also think about, if you don't keep your information with you all the time, make sure that it's in a safe place. In an event that something happened, you can be able to designate somebody, and they'll know exactly where to go to. Make a medical allergy list, which is what we discussed. Make sure you learn how to schedule your own medical appointments. That is key. And especially, I know Dr. Key is going to get into it about the social determinants of health, but especially as far as transportation. We've had a lot of patients that canceled their doctor's appointments because of the timing, and because of bus routes and everything. So make sure that you schedule an appointment that you can actually commit to. Make a list of questions you want to ask your doctors. Plan to describe your symptoms in detail: when it started, where is the pain located, and how it feels, and write the information down. So it's basically just going in and giving the physician or whoever caring for you a clear picture and a clear story of what's going on, so that they will know how to accurately treat you. And as I mentioned earlier, know your personal and family medical history so you can complete a health history form at the medical appointment. And then, too, also, if you are going to see somebody, a new physician, a lot of times in advance, they will send out the paperwork in advance for you to fill it out, especially now with COVID and everything. And take someone with you to take notes during your doctor appointment to help you remember what your healthcare provider discussed during your appointment. And make sure you take somebody that you trust and somebody that you feel comfortable with. And also, sometimes I'll be honest, physicians and healthcare providers, sometimes when they have other people in the room asking a lot of questions, sometimes they can get a little leery. But just acknowledge upfront that this is your healthcare champion, your partner, and your advocate and your spokesperson. So you just want to make sure that you clarify in the beginning why they're there and that that's that designated person to help you have better healthcare outcomes. Don't be afraid to ask for clarity if your health provider didn't provide enough information or if the information was confusing to you. It's okay to ask the physician, can they repeat something? Can they give a explain it in a different way? Sometimes as healthcare providers, we get caught up and we get to talking, and sometimes we may forget to talk in layman's terms, but remind them to break it down in a way that you can understand it so that you can have better healthcare outcomes. And if you are ever in a situation and you feel like they are not listening, there's always a chain of command and somebody that you can report to. The one thing that I don't want you to do is just to abruptly stop going to your healthcare physician because you or the healthcare provider may did not see eye to eye. My medication list. This list could save my life. Yes, knowing what medications you are on, knowing how many times you take them, like in the morning, in the night, and in the afternoon, and then also making sure that list is accurate, because say in an event you do go to the hospital or you do have a incident and you have that list, and then people around you would be able to identify when was the last time you took a medication and when is the next time you need to take a medication. So that's very important. And I know, sometimes, who would be a really good help is some teenagers. If you have any teenagers in your family, any grandchildren, aunts, nieces, they are very bright and they love that type of stuff. So, it don't always necessarily have to be an adult that can assist you. It could be a young teen, but just make sure that they understand what's going on and they would be a great help to you.
Thank you, Nurse T. And I did add that link to the medication list to your to the chat. And to no further ado, we actually are going to bring up Dr. Kent Key. Dr. Gordon said we'll pause just for a moment to talk about health literacy, and we will bring up Dr. Key. Kent, is it possible for you, as you come on board, first to show us, because behind the scenes you were letting Nurse Battle know that you know her from the streets, literally. Tell us how you are familiar with the Flint community.
Well, specifically with Nurse Battle, her husband's family and my father's side of the family grew up together before I was even conceived. So I have a long history with the Battle family with respect to the father's side of my family. But I'm a Flint native, born and raised here in Flint, Michigan on Flint Park Street, 48505 with the Bunch Elementary. And graduated from Northwestern, the best high school in this whole area. Should have been a Wildcat. Yes, you should have. However, but yes, so I'm just a Flint native. Went on to pursue my master's and my doctorate in public health. Worked at the medical school at U of M for about 9 years at the Michigan Institute for Clinical Health Research, and did a lot of projects with the School of Public Health there. And then I am now here at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine, downtown Flint, in the old Flint Journal building.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, sir. And to no further ado, I did have to jump in there. That wildcat that it just
It's
jumped over.
okay. We know we know you're a little salty, but you should have been, but you weren't.
You should have been. Like, I'm a wildcat, so
That's how we tell them. We tell everybody that's not a wildcat. You should have been, but it's okay.
It's
We give you
okay.
grace. We give you grace.
To no further ado, sir, we're going to bring up your slides. Please share with the community what's this whole thing about social determinants of.
Yeah, so I actually teach this course at U of M Flint, actually. But the social determinants of health are those things that are outside of just going to the doctor that actually impacts your health. And so we'll get into it a little bit as we progress through the presentation. Next slide. So as we talk about the social determinants of health, my goal is to define what those determinants are and to give us a means by which we can discuss how the social determinants undermine our health and create and what challenges are out there to achieve that keeps us from achieving health equity when we do not take into account the social determinants of health. Next slide, please. So to kind of ground us, I want to kind of start out with the definition of health, and I pull from the World Health Organization, better known as the WHO, that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. In other words, you cannot have a disease and you cannot have an illness and not still be healthy, right? And so when we think about health, it is not just physical, but it's also mental and social well-being, and they are just as important as our physical health. And actually, the stressors from social and mental issues oftentimes erode our physical health. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later. Next slide. So I kind of want to just kind of set up the frame of this discussion. So in the United States, and this is some data from 2018, the United States spent more money per person, right, per capita than any other country in the world on healthcare. We're at the top, spending the most for healthcare, whether that's going to the doctor, having our tests, our screenings, going into the hospital, prescriptions, all of that. We, bar none, spend the most out of every country in the world, right? Now, if you go to the next slide, this is the list of countries that have the highest life expectancy and overall health and wellness. And you notice the United States isn't on the list out of the top 20. Now we're number one spending the most money, but we don't even make the cut of those that have the best life expectancy and overall health and well-being. So something is wrong. Next slide. Something is clearly wrong. You know, why do we spend the most, yet we don't even rank in that list of countries around life expectancy and our overall health? And so I tend to ask my students the question, so besides your genetic code, meaning through your family health history and what is inherited through DNA, etc., what is the next strongest predictor of a person's life expectancy outside of their genetic code? I'm going to pause for a second, go to the next slide. And the answer is your zip code. Where you live is the next predictor of your life expectancy. So this is some things that we played around, just kind of looking at some local zip codes. So here, if you live in 48505, your life expectancy is predicted to be about 64.7 or 65 years of age. But if you're in 48503, it increases a little bit, almost 68 years of age. But if you're in Grand Blanc, then you see that your life expectancy increases to almost 82 years of age. And then you can kind of see what the average is for Genesee County, which is 75, which is still higher than those that we see in the Flint zip codes. And you can see what the life expectancy average is for the state of Michigan and for the United States across the grid. And there are actually some websites you can go to with the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation that you can actually put in your zip code and compare zip codes to see where the overall life expectancy is. Now, the question is, why is this happening? Why does your zip code have anything to do with your life expectancy, when zip codes was really designed around how we deliver mail and how we create addresses, et cetera? Now, there's a long, deeper conversation we can have when we take a dive into systemic inequities and systemic racism to answer that question. But just understand that zip codes play a predictor, and most zip codes, unfortunately, in this country are still segregated by one, racial class, and by two, social class. Next slide. So to answer that question, we want to examine the social determinants of health. And they are defined by the Centers for Disease Control as conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play, and affect a wide range of health risks and outcomes. These conditions are known as the social determinants of health. This is the general 5 broad categories of the social determinants: neighborhood and built environment, health and healthcare, social and community context, education, and economic stability. But we'll have a deeper breakdown as we move a little bit forward. Go to the next slide. So as I gave you that CDC, Centers for Disease Control definition, I kind of like to then just translate it into kind of layman terms. So social itself means your interactions with external environment, meaning your friends, family, places, different systems outside of your personal being. And then determinants are indicators, something that is affected or influenced by something, right? And then we just talked about health, and we talked about health in the context of your physical, your social, your spiritual, and your mental well-being. Now, social health, we can say that can be isms. It could be racism. It can be classism. It can be so many of the things that we see going on in society now. But when we think about the whole prism of health, it includes all of those particular domains or factors. So putting it all together, we get your interactions with the external environment that affect or influence your social, spiritual, physical, and mental well-being are the social determinants of health. And that again could include education, income, environment, access to health care and specific services, and also your race, ethnicity, and or gender. Next slide. And here's a bigger breakdown of what we mean by the social determinants. So under economic stability, that's employment. So we know zip codes and neighborhoods that have higher rates of unemployment tend to have higher rates of crime, higher rates of diabetes and stroke and heart disease and those things related to unhealthy diets, right? So it also includes how much debt you make and medical bills. And we know that if you're families households that incur a lot of debt, oftentimes the leaders of those households are mentally impacted, which then falls into stress. And then we know that stress releases certain chemicals in our body that wear and tear at our body that puts us at higher risk for strokes and for diabetes and some of these other chronic illnesses. So again, these things are all interrelated. It's almost like a domino effect, right? So then you have your neighborhood and physical environment. That's housing, transportation, safety, parks, playgrounds, walkability. Then you have education. That's our literacy, right? General literacy is bad. In the United States, I think at one time, the last time I checked, the average reading level for the American country is between 3rd to 4th grade reading level. But can you imagine when you then put health literacy on top of literacy? Because health literacy is a whole nother language, because medical terms are even more difficult to understand and to communicate with than general language, right? It also has to do with those who live here that maybe English is not their first language, right? And so we think about translation, right? Then there's also higher education and vocational training. All those things fall under education. Then we have food, and we talk about hunger and access to healthy options. Quite often we hear in this day and time people talking about food deserts, how in most urban communities, and specifically minority communities and or low socioeconomic communities, there are higher concentrations of liquor stores that sell unhealthy food and fast food chains are plentiful, but they're very rare do we find full service grocery stores with healthy food. You might find a market up the street, but their produce 9 times out of 10 is not as appealing and healthy as other places. And oftentimes people call those food deserts. And when I go across the country talking and lecturing, I often challenge people to change that language and to not call it a food desert, because a desert is a natural ecosystem, meaning it happens naturally. What that is what we call food apartheid. That is systemic, and it is controlled, and it is a pattern that is implemented by people because of choices around policy, around political domains, and around economics. Then we also have the community and social context, social integration, support systems, how we engage within the community, right? Discrimination, racism is a social context, right? How we look at people, sexism is a social misogyny. All of these things are social contexts, and they also impact our health tremendously. And then finally, we look at the healthcare system. Not only how we have access, is it access, true access, and then is it true quality healthcare? And then these things also manifest as health coverage, provider availability, provider bias, cultural competence, and quality of care. And then all of these impact our health outcomes, which either produces mortality, morbidity, life expectancy, healthcare expenditures, our health status, and impacts also our functional limitations. So that's kind of the broader stroke of what social determinants are and how they manifest in our community. So next slide. Why is this important? Our overall health is impacted by many factors. Again, it's where we live, learn, work, and play. The environment we live in, the access we have to education and healthy food, financial stability, and good relationships impact our health. To improve the welfare of the world's poorest and most vulnerable population, it helps us to understand the variety of factors that contributes to the person's or that community's overall health, right? And so that's why we have these health, these determinants. And here are some of the more widely known determinants that also include culture and gender. Also biological and genetic endowment, meaning inherited health is what we just summarize it in. And then also health behaviors. There are some things that are not necessarily internal, but we learn behaviors such as drinking and smoking and some other things. And so these are some of the other things that we want to also have discussion in when we talk about the concept of social determinants of health. And then you might say, well, Dr. Key, why is this important? I go to my doctor. That's all I need to do, long as I'm in compliant. Well, you need to understand that going to your doctors and going into, first of all, most people of color, if we do have good, decent health insurance, may not still go to the doctor regularly just because of the historical mistrust that African Americans and other communities of color may have with the medical and institutional systems because of the injustices and inhumane, unethical treatment that we have historically received. And we don't just talk about Tuskegee. That's just what people talk about because it's the most popular. But there were so many studies and so many things linked to medical, to the medical field that really was inhumane. When we think about gynecology, the father of gynecology was a European American man, and guess what he did? He actually did hysterectomies on African women enslaved and African women and other women of color, and didn't use anesthesiology because people at that time of color were considered less than human, so therefore they didn't feel the pain. These are inhumane practices that to this day feed into a lot of the hesitancy why African Americans and other people of color tend to not want to engage with the medical field. But those of us who are in the medical field know how important it is for us to engage and how we have to then be transparent about the past historical traumas so that we can then create a ethical and an equitable opportunity for people of color to engage with the medical field and with the field of research. And this is important because going to the doctor is only a small percentage of what really impacts your overall health and well-being. Go to the next slide. The Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, I'm a scholar, a fellow from the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation. We conducted what we call the county health rankings model. And what this model shows is that actually what clinical care only impacts 20% of your overall length of life and quality of health. And that's when you're looking at it from the domains of access to care and quality of care. But look, our health behaviors, whether we smoke or not, how we eat, what our diet is, alcohol and drug use, and then sexual activity, all of those make up about 30% of what impacts our length of life and quality of life. But look at what impacts the most: social and economic factors, such as education and employment and income, family and social support, and then community safety. That impacts 40% of our overall life and quality of life and our length of life. So when we think about those things that impact us, yes, it is important to go to the doctor. It is important to have a doctor that you trust and that you have good communication with and that you follow the script. But your doctor can only be as good as the information you give them with your family health history. And your doctor can only be as good as you complying with the information that your doctor shares. And that's, again, if you trust your medical provider, right? And then you also have physical environment, our air quality, our water quality, and then housing and transit. And what that the column to the left says is that if we're going to do any interventions to increase our length of life and quality of life, then we have to then implement policies and programs that impact those health factors that will give us the type of outcomes that we need. And so again, it is important to address the social determinants of health, because when we think about the determinants, health behaviors are wrapped up in those determinants, social and economic factors are in those determinants, and physical environment, that is around 80% of what impacts your health is actually the social determinants of health, more so than just you going to the doctor and to make sure that you go to your clinical visits. Next slide, please. And so this is a framework by where we as communities can really channel our resources and show us where we need to actually impact and put programming and interventions if we're going to use social determinants as a model to really get us to overall health and wellness. And what this shows is that we have to do more upstream interventions so that we can actually save money as a community and as individuals, save resources and save lives. Unfortunately, most of what we see in the United States happens downstream. In other words, instead of going to the doctor to get preventative care, we don't go until we're at the emergency room, and by then the heart attack or the stroke is happening, and now it's downstream and we have to deal with tertiary care. So there are so many different things that we have to do and so many models we can use to get us to where we're trying to go. And this is one roadmap that possibly can guide us there. Next slide. This is also one of the frameworks that they were using in the Bay Area that really just shows how, if we're really going to deal with those inequities or those social determinants in that social inequity column, that we also have to think about the role that institutions play in creating those inequities, and how in that living conditions box, we almost see every determinant in that space, and how that then impacts our risky behaviors, how that impacts disease and injury, and unfortunately, mortality rates. And that we have to have effective policies if we're going to get there. And we have to do more upstream as opposed to getting downstream. And by then we have the onset of those diseases and those injuries, which unfortunately leads to premature mortality and short life expectancy. Next slide. And this is another example of how we have to then look at the root causes of those disparities. As you can see at the base of the tree, you see many of the disparities: employment, and those determinants, housing, social environment, built environment. But many of them are impacted by those root causes, such as classism, racism, poverty, ableism, sexism, etc. And if we don't address those causes, those underlying causes that we don't see, that's under the ground there, then we'll still continue to get what we see that's blossoming on the tree. And that's cancer and depression and behavior issues, heart disease, obesity, etc. Next slide, please. And this just shows that if we're going to really impact overall health and wellness using a social determinants of health framework, the core of that has to be true community engagement. It has to be where there is inclusivity, diversity, there are partnerships, because no one group, no one entity, no one discipline can do this alone. And it has to be a concerted effort. So the root core of that community engagement wheel will be the center and the nucleus of trying to work through to get towards health equity and transforming systems for health through the auspices of social determinants of health. And that's what I have for you. Next slide. That's all I have today. I tried to condense an entire course into about 15 minutes, 10 minutes. And thank you all for having me on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Key. Thank you, Nurse Battle. Thank you, Nurse T. I do want to bring up Dr. Gordon to even further this discussion about health literacy. Dr. Key, you touched on some very critical things, and we're so conscious to try to make sure that as we take this information to the streets, it's palatable, so that the community will be able to digest it. Dr. Gordon, can you share really quick, and so then we can open up for panels and open up for questions. Our audience, please do put your questions. I know that was a lot of information from Nurse Battle, Nurse T, and Dr. Key, and Dr. Gordon's going to add some more information, but please add your questions in the chat and we will address those. Dr. Gordon, could you show, there's this 3 keys that you were going to share with us. I didn't want to leave those out, ma'am.
They're done. They're on my side. What's the access? Okay, accurate information, accessible information, and just not actionable information. It's just not providing information. It's providing action, a plan of action. Kind of like what Dr. Keys was speaking on. He hit a lot of key points, like historical racism. We know that, senior doctor. We know that these are important, but get into the meat and potatoes, as Nurse T say. Fat meat is greasy. So I know you had a lot of information, but we need accurate information that's using health literacy. Best practices does not mean dumbing down or watering down the information, distorting the science. Health literacy practices ensure that information is present accurately and in a way that is understandable. Next slide. Accessible, I won't go all over it. Simply creating health information does not mean people see it or can use it. The location, manners, and how you present it, information has to have an impact. Its availability is a key considerations include, can you see it? How are you seeing it? Do you have any key messages? Have you made the information easy to go to? Have you digitized information? Is it large font? Do you have images that correspond to your text? Is captions helpful? This is just making for health education, making it accessible. The next slide, please. Action. It's human nature to me to tell people everything we know about something, but it doesn't necessarily mean or help in the area of health. We generally want people to start or stop doing something or do more or less of something, but we often spend our resources providing people with basic information rather than recommendations. Some basic information may be important, but make sure you have sources that can take action to. And then we just go back to Athena. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. I didn't want to leave those out because as we come, I'm going to bring everybody back in the room. That was a lot of information, as always. So, Tanya, if I could start with you, ma'am. The vaccines are different locations. It is from, what are the age groups that most of the vaccines are available at?
Michigan United, yeah, we do 12 and up. Okay. Mostly, but they are available for ages 6 months and up. And I believe that now they do have the booster also for ages 6 months.
Perfect. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I do want to mention that our mobile app, GCCP, has those lists of vaccine clinics that you can access. Nurse T, I did we shared the link in the chat. Can you just explain, not explain, but just give us a refresher? What are some of the things that we should have on our medication list when we go see our primary care physician?
Your history, your medications, what they prescribed them for, or what that they prescribed them for, because sometimes medications can have a dual purpose. And then the last time that you took your medication, that's always helpful to keep a record of the time that you have taken your medications, just in case you need that particular medication, so they'll know the time frame that you have took it.
I used to fuss at my mom because she would have it on a spreadsheet, and she would have the doses, the doctor, she had the point of contact, and but it came in so handy, and they already asked for it, and she already had it available. So I was smiling in the background when you were sharing that. That is available. The downloadable link, Dr. Gordon shared that with us. It should be on your chat. And then Dr. Gordon, give me those three A's.
Listen, listen, access, accessibility, and I forget what's on the screen. Read Dr. Key, come on in. Well, what I want to say is about like that medication. It's about the health literacy piece. I'm gonna tie that in there about that. So if you know your medication and you're in the hospital, and a nurse, just by with the things that are going on in the hospital, if you know what medication you take, well, I know this white pill is for my blood pressure, say high thiazide, and someone come with a pink pill, so this is for you, and then like, wait a minute. That's not my medication. So you need to know what your medication is. Not all medication might have different colors, but you need to know what you're taking. That's part of being accountable for your health. Know what you're taking. We know that you're not going to know everything, or you're not, like Tanya was talking about, going to the Google, as we say, learning everything from Google, but you should have a basic knowledge of what, actually, why am I taking this medication? What does the medication do? Like Nurse T said, there's dual purposes for some medication. Why I'm taking this for my blood pressure, how often I take it, and then know the side effects. So if you do start having some side effects to the medication, you can take that back to your doctor. So that's part of owning your own health. But as Nurse T said, activating your healthcare power.
Awesome. Thank you for that, ma'am. Dr. Key.
Yes, ma'am.
Social determinants of health. Thank you so much. That was so useful. And the way that you presented, I've seen it before. We work together as colleagues. And the way that you were able to share it made even more sense. Thank you for sharing those graphics, providing the links. Please, everyone, take advantage of the knowledge that we have in our Dr. Key and others. Those links were put in the chat. He provided those for follow up and ask pertinent questions. It is essential for us to take autonomy of your health. We are either our worst enemies or our best friends. Dr. Key, you want to share a couple more or summary or any other thoughts that you wanted to share with us?
Well, I just want again to just encourage the listening audience to really look at health outside of the traditional domain, and to understand that your health is impacted by everything. It's the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, and it's not just medications. And oftentimes when we think about when we go to the doctor and we have to get prescriptions, it's oftentimes because of things that we did not either know or handle or were not aware of. So just broaden your understanding of what impacts your overall health. Be mindful of what those things can be, and then share that information with other people. The more we know, the more we grow. And I think that it is so important that we have these conversations with our family members. You have to teach your children. I know in the African-American culture, is almost this whole silence rule where we don't share certain things. They need to know. Children need to know if grandparents and great-grandparents had strokes, or if they had cancer, or if they had, oftentimes when we go to the funerals, people just don't talk about certain things. Silence is killing us, right? I had a friend in when I was an undergrad, she had a full hysterectomy at 25 and didn't know 2 aunts had a partial, and a grandmother had a full, because certain things you just don't talk about. But because she didn't know, when she went to go see her doctor, she couldn't get the proper preventative screenings that possibly could have prevented her from having to go that route. So please share your information. If you want to look at it a different way, the health information you share could be the very legacy that you leave to the next generation.
And I agree, that is so excellent. But
Good.
yeah, holistically, I can say a holistic, the whole being. But when I speak of like medication, I had a family, my aunt. She did everything holistically. She, was the perfect weight, perfect height, had the perfect diet. Um, you know, like so we say, pray and don't delay. But that one important piece that she was missing was she tried to treat her hypertension without the medication. So there are things that you can do to modify, what your modifiable factors. And we say treat the whole body. We say pray, but don't delay. So we believe in, like, we're praying like that the Lord can heal me, and we believe wholeheartedly that. But He's also put things, give us, like I said, put on the whole armor. So put the tool, whatever tool that you have to fight. Like say your diet, like say if you have mental health issues, seek out counseling. Like you said, in our community, there's such a stigma around mental health. People don't want to talk about, Uncle John. They say, oh, Uncle John, he had a problem. He was, the C word. I won't say that. Instead of saying, well, actually, he might be suffering from bipolar or depression. So those are things that we have to get into. And just like say, fat meat is greasy. It is what it is. Like you say, if you eat too much, we had the holiday came around. Our diet, we don't have the best diet. I just recently changed, I'm vegetarian now. That's not for everyone, but you have to find out what works for you. But knowing that we just cutting back all the salt that we put on our food, all frying, pop. I still, have a little sip of pop, So these are things, it's my birthday, so I will have me some cake and some ice cream, but just everything in moderation. So it's just, Dr. Keith put so many important things, and Nurse T, and Nurse Battle and Athena. Is just awesome, and we just thank you for bringing those things that we all need to work together in our community to make it a better place.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You, Dr. Keith, first of all, I just want to say thank you for that presentation. It was awesome. It was so detailed and inspirational at the same time, kind of heartbreaking because being a healthcare provider, and we know all of the social determinants of health, the historical traumas as far as serving our community. But a lot of the healthcare providers are experiencing those same social determinants of health. So, like, say, especially when we talk about racism and social injustice. So, like, when you are African American and you do see somebody that come in and look like you, and you do try to provide those services and connect, you're sometimes feeling the same way that the community is feeling that's coming in. So it was just so inspirational. But do you have any idea on some coping mechanisms or what we can do to make it through this healthcare crisis? Because we are literally in a crisis, because it's like you got a double-sided fence of historical trauma.
Yeah. I've actually done some counseling with a couple of health networks in Atlanta, or really some consultations with them on ways, everybody needs somebody, whether it's your pastor, whether everybody needs somebody, every mental health worker needs a mental health worker so that they can then unload. And what I try to take to when I talk to minority healthcare workers, the first thing that you got to do, one is just be very transparent, with those who look like you, who you serve, because one of the tricks that has happened, and when people always talk about Tuskegee, right? But remember the nurse that was recruiting all of them, they used the nurse that looked like them. So just because, although in the data, it shows us when we talk about patient provider concordance, that people tend to feel more comfortable when it's a provider that looks like them. There is still some resistance because we know historically institutions have put people that look like the people that they're doing whatever they're doing to as the face. And so I think it's really about being transparent, showing people that what the questions that they're asking are valuable, even if they're trying to formulate it. Because oftentimes, when the doctor or the provider says, do you have any questions? You're so busy trying to one with the health literacy piece, Dr. T, trying to understand what they're asking. It's hard in that moment to come up with questions. And so just valuing them and showing them that you're really there to advocate for them. And part of that is building that trust over time. Now, if you're a nurse in a practice, you can have a little bit more time to do that. But if you're just the nurse in the emergency room, you might not see that person, again. So it's really different. It's really ironic that I'm here with almost everybody as a nurse except for Athena and myself. And the National Academy of Medicine invited me to be one of the research managers to contribute to the Future of Nursing Report 2030 because of my public health background and having that broader perspective. And I raised some of those issues to the Academy when they got ready to make those recommendations. And so some of that may be embedded throughout that, but because of time, we can have a talk offline and really take a deeper conversation, or maybe this might be a different show. But I'll just put that at you guys in your hands to figure out how we go forward with that.
Being that you're a wildcat, we could probably bring you back.
Indians, wait a minute, I forgot. I'm an Indian, so wait a bit.
And Dr. Key, now your family is
I'm a set trip on Yellow Beard.
Should have been a wildcat.
And yes, Dr. Nurse Battle, the generation before me, the majority of them were Vikings. But, the best was the Wildcats, and we came after them. And we were all under Dr. Bessie Stram, and that's what it was. That's what it was.
Love it, love it, love it. I love you guys. We got a few announcements. We're over time just a bit. Again, we wanted to bring to your remembrance, Dr. Key gave us some great information, a ton of information. There is a summit January 24th through 26th. That link was added to the chat. If you are available, it is virtual. So if you have time, please do take advantage of the opportunity to get even a deeper dive into social determinants of health, or register to take Dr. Key's class. Next slide, please. Of course, you have the GCCP mobile app, web-based app, where you can download information about COVID-19, testing sites, data trends, and resources for parents. Next slide, please. It is available. The Flint East app. We also have and I'll go really quick. Our next slide, we have a recipe contest. We do have some new features on the app, so you'll need to refresh your app if you've already downloaded the Flint Eats app. If not, if you haven't for some particular reason downloaded the app, you can go ahead and go to the Play Store, the Google Play, or the Apple Store and enter your recipe for a chance to win up to $100 for the best recipe. And that will conclude. We'll probably announce the winner on our next show in February. And I'll share again, our smartphone training is available on the third Thursday of this month at Hasselbrink Senior Center with Dr. Beverly Lewis. So Mrs. Beverly Lewis from Hasselbrink. So if you know anyone who may need some assistance with their smart devices, please invite them out. We do use COVID-19 precautionary measures. So it is a great resource for the community, and it is free to all who participate. So again, we want to thank you so much for being in our audience. I thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. Thank you, Nurse Battle. Thank you, Nurse T. Mr. Wildcat Key, thank you for your information. Join us back here on Facebook or YouTube so that you can get more information as we take it to the streets. Healthy conversations for us, by us, COVID-19 and beyond. We're here every second Sunday. So our next show will be February 12th. Thank you so much. Take care.